I was checking out the PlayStation Plus extra catalog and I discovered that some games I'd owned on other platforms are also available here as well. So I made the difficult decision to pay the $16 to temporarily download those games, as well as going to GameStop and picking up a physical copy of Cyberpunk 2077 on the Nintendo Switch 2 just to make this video. But anyways, the Switch 2 has been out for 2 months now and has already been proven to be a portable powerhouse, supposedly delivering better performance than last gen consoles. However, when you consider that the price is closer to a current gen system like the PS5 and Xbox Series consoles, it makes a purchase like this less justifiable for gamers that care about having the best graphics or best performance in any cross-platform game. But for those that don't care too much about power and want something that can play the newest games on a handheld, the Switch 2 still makes a great buy if you're willing to spend $450. What about those previous generation consoles, specifically the Xbox One and PS4? How well, graphically, does the Switch 2 compare to these consoles? That's what we're going to be doing in this video. I've picked out a few games that I own on the Switch 2, as well as PS4, and later in this video, I'll be doing a graphical comparison between them. The last gen console I'll be using in this video is the PS4 Slim. It's nearly identical to the standard PS4, with the only differences being the size, power consumption, and heat output. I picked this system because it's the highest performing base console of that generation, plus it's the only one I have. If we take a look at the specifications, they appear very strong for their time period. The CPU powering the PS4 is an 8-core AMD Jaguar processor with a clock speed of 1.6 GHz. Keep in mind that this was AMD before they introduced their Ryzen line of processors. Instead, they focused on their FX line of processors, which were quite poor in terms of single thread performance. So it's no surprise that the PS4 CPU was also underpowered, resulting in a bottleneck that kept games from hitting 60 FPS at times. This will largely depend on the game that is being played. Some may be more GPU intensive than CPU intensive, and also located on the same chip is the Radeon GPU with 1.84 teraflops of graphics processing power, capable of outputting up to 1080p at 60 FPS if supported by the software. Not all games hit this resolution frame rate, with many being reduced down to 720p or by using a dynamic resolution. Around the chip is 8GB of GDDR5 memory, 16 times the amount that the PlayStation 3 had. Also included in most PS4s is a 500GB 5400 RPM hard drive. Some systems had 1TB and 2TB drives, and they can easily be upgraded to a higher capacity hard drive or SSD. Every game you would purchase, whether it's physical or digital, would always be installed to the hard drive. Now that we've gone over the PS4, let's move on to the Switch 2. The Switch 2 uses NVIDIA's T239 SoC, which uses an ARM processor, the 8-core A78C, with a clock speed of just 1 GHz. Due to differences in processor architecture and power efficiency, comparing clock speed is not what determines the performance of the chip compared to others, especially to what's used in the PS4. According to benchmarks online, the CPU in the Switch 2 outperforms the PS4 CPU, along with the original Switch and other mobile devices. The graphics on the Switch 2 are much more powerful compared to the original Switch. The GPU is an NVIDIA Ampere-based chip, similar to a mobile RTX 2050. Because of how the Switch 2 is designed with its portability in mind, there are 2 performance modes. In handheld mode, the GPU operates with 1.72 teraflops of graphical power, but when the system is connected to the dock and outputting to the TV, it operates at 3 teraflops, much higher than the PS4 and Xbox One GPU. Along with that, the system also supports ray tracing and NVIDIA's AI upscaling technology, DLSS. The Switch 2 also has 12GB of LPDDR5X RAM, 4 more gigabytes than the PS4, but both also use a different memory type. 256GB of UFS 3.1 flash storage is built in, with the option to expand it using a microSD Express card. Not exactly an SSD, but still much faster than a mechanical hard drive and the storage used in the original Switch. Here's a full detailed sheet comparing the core components in both systems. Just looking at the numbers alone may not determine the final performance of either system, as I will provide comparisons between both systems shortly. The first game on our list is Fortnite. Even with the SSD upgrade on the PS4, the Switch 2 still loads into a match faster than the PS4. On the PS4, the game runs with a dynamic resolution up to 1080p while maintaining 60 FPS most of the time, with a few drops. The Switch 2 is very similar but runs at a higher resolution and has higher detailed textures. The Switch 2 seems to maintain a more stable frame rate than the PS4. However, I do prefer playing with the PS4 controller over the Switch 2 Joy-Cons. But again, there's also the Switch 2 Pro controller, which I don't have at the moment, something I may consider getting later on. As for another game in my collection, Hogwarts Legacy, it also runs similarly on both systems. Strangely, the PS4 version has an option for an uncapped frame rate, unlike the Switch 2. I didn't enable it for this comparison though, just kept the frame rate at 30 FPS. But the main star of the show is Cyberpunk 2077, which is not only a launch title for the Switch 2, but also a game that was hit with so many technical issues at launch that it got delisted from the PlayStation Store for a period of time. As of 2025, it appears to be fixed. The Switch 2 version loads into the Nomad storyline faster than the PS4, and keep in mind, I'm using the physical Switch 2 version, not the digital version, unlike every PS4 game which requires to be installed at all times. If you zoom in, the Switch 2 appears to have higher detailed textures than the PS4. I read some articles online, and some say that this version of the game uses the next-gen textures from the PS5 and Xbox Series X version of the game. Both versions maintain a steady 30 FPS most of the time, with dips into the 20s in areas with lots of pedestrians. There is one exception with the Switch 2 version. If you play the game in handheld mode, or have a high refresh rate display in docked mode, there's an additional performance mode which runs the game with an uncapped frame rate hitting around 40 FPS most of the time. Not exactly 60, but still better than 30, and can provide an advantage to some players. So you might be wondering why I haven't mentioned the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X in this video. Well, those two systems are basically a half-generation bump from the base consoles. The graphics in either system actually have higher raw processing power than the Switch 2, but something they lack is ray tracing, something that the Switch 2 is supposedly capable of. The CPU in both systems are still weaker than the Switch 2, along with the fact that both systems ship with spinning hard drives. In conclusion, while the Switch 2 is nowhere near a PS5 or Xbox Series X, it does give a decent advantage compared to its last-gen counterparts, delivering faster loading, higher resolutions, and even better frame rates in some games. I mean, it claims to be able to hit 120 FPS in supported games. While it is powerful, several limitations still apply. Keep in mind that this is a handheld that runs on a battery. With the limit it's given, it's basically a portable PS4 and close to an Xbox Series S when played on the dock and connected to the TV. Anyways, that's it for this video. If you found this video helpful, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more videos like this, and I'll see you guys later.